I would prefer another nurse.
She is one of our most experienced nurses.
I would still like someone else assigned.
Please don't let her touch my son, Vanessa Whitmore shouted angrily. The entire emergency room went silent. The wealthy woman stood beside the hospital bed, her perfectly manicured hand protectively stretched across her unconscious 8-year-old son. I said, "Get me another nurse," she shouted. Nurse Maya Johnson froze. For one painful second, nobody moved. Then the woman said the words Maya had heard far too many times in her life. "I don't want a black nurse treating my child." 24 hours later, that same woman would be on her knees, begging Maya to save her son's life. But by then, Maya had already walked away. Before we begin today's story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Make sure you subscribe right now because you do not want to miss part 2. The ambulance doors burst open. 8-year-old male, severe respiratory distress, oxygen saturation dropping. A paramedic shouted as they rushed through the emergency entrance. Nurse Maya Johnson was already moving. For 10 years, Maya had worked in pediatric intensive care at St. Catherine Medical Center. She was known throughout the hospital for two things: her extraordinary skill and her calm under pressure. Children trusted her instantly, doctors respected her, parents usually adored her, usually. "Let's move, people," Maya called out, snapping on her gloves as she fell into step beside the stretcher. The little boy on the stretcher looked frighteningly pale. His breathing was shallow and uneven. His small fingers lay limp at his sides, and every few seconds his chest hitched like it was working twice as hard to do half the job. Maya immediately placed a pulse oximeter on his finger. She watched the number, then watched it again. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" she asked gently, leaning close to his face. The boy's eyelids fluttered weakly. "Okay," she said softly. "I've got you, I'm right here." Before he could respond, a sharply dressed woman appeared beside the bed, her heels clicking rapidly against the polished floor. "Is my son going to be okay?" she demanded. "Someone please tell me he's going to be okay." "Nurse Maya Johnson," Maya said calmly, not looking away from the monitors. "We're going to take excellent care of him. What's his name?" "Noah," the woman said. "Noah Whitmore. He's 8 years old. He was perfectly fine this morning, completely fine, and then he just collapsed." I don't understand what happened." "Noah." Maya addressed the boy directly, her voice shifting into that particular gentleness she reserved only for children. "My name is Maya. I'm going to take very good care of you, okay?" The boy's fingers twitched slightly. The tiniest response Maya noticed. She always noticed. The woman looked directly at Maya. Something changed in her expression. Her eyes narrowed. "The nurse assigned to my son." "Yes, ma'am." A long silence followed, the kind that had a shape to it. Then the woman turned to the doctor standing beside the bay door. "I want someone else." Dr. Reynolds frowned, looking up from the chart in his hands. "I'm sorry." "A different nurse," the woman said, firm, certain, like she was placing an order at a restaurant rather than standing in an emergency room with a critically ill child. Maya kept her expression completely professional. "Ma'am, your son needs immediate treatment. Every second matters right now." Woman folded her arms across her chest. "I said I don't want you treating him." Maya had learned over the years not to assume, to ask, to give people the chance to mean something different from what they appeared to mean. "May I ask if there's a specific concern regarding his care?" The woman lowered her voice, though not nearly enough for the question to be private. "I simply feel more comfortable with someone else." From behind her, a tall man in a dark suit stepped forward. He had said nothing until now, standing slightly to the side with his arms folded. "Vanessa," he said, a warning wrapped in a single word. But Vanessa Whitmore was not in the business of being warned. "I want another nurse," she repeated. Dr. Reynolds set down the chart. "Whitmore, Nurse Johnson, is one of our most exceptional pediatric nurses. I have personally worked alongside her for 8 years, and I can tell you without any hesitation." "I don't doubt her qualifications," Vanessa said smoothly. "I simply prefer someone else." "Ma'am," Dr. Reynolds kept his voice measured. "Your son's oxygen levels are dropping. We do not have time for." "Then stop wasting time arguing with me and get me another nurse." Room was uncomfortably still. A monitor beeped in steady rhythm, indifferent to the tension. Maya looked at Noah. His color was worsening. She could see it happening in real time. She took one step toward him. Vanessa stepped directly into her path. "Touch him," she said quietly. Coldly, eyes locked with Maya's, Dr. Reynolds intervened immediately, positioning himself between them. "Whitmore, I don't want a black nurse touching my child." The words landed like something dropped onto a hard floor. Nobody moved. The beeping continued. Maya felt it move through her the way she always felt it. Not like a shock anymore. More like stepping onto a staircase step you already knew was broken. The jolt was smaller. The weariness afterward was the same. 10 years. 10 years of saving children. 10 years of sleepless nights and impossible cases and hands that had pulled small lives back from the very edge. 10 years of choosing to come back every single day to a job that asked everything of her. And still, this room, this moment, this woman, Richard Whitmore finally spoke. "My wife isn't comfortable," he said stiffly, directing his words at Dr. Reynolds as though Maya were no longer present. "Surely this hospital has other qualified staff available." Dr. Reynolds looked at him with an expression that said everything he was professionally required not to say out loud. Martin Hale, the hospital administrator, arrived moments later after being urgently called. He was slightly out of breath and doing a poor job of hiding it. His eyes swept the room rapidly, landing on the Whitmores, then on Maya, then back on the Whitmores again. Martin knew exactly who the Whitmores were. Richard Whitmore owned half the city's commercial properties. Vanessa sat on multiple charity boards across the city. Their donations to St. Catherine Medical Center totaled in the millions. Their name was on a plaque on the 3rd floor. Martin smiled. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, we certainly want you to feel comfortable and confident in your son's care." Maya stared at him. "Martin." He avoided her eyes entirely. "Nurse Johnson, perhaps another assignment this evening would be more appropriate given the circumstances." Dr. Reynolds turned on him. "Martin, this is completely unacceptable. This child is critically ill and you're standing here." "Dr. Reynolds." Martin's voice tightened. "I have made my decision." "You're making a mistake." "Nurse Johnson." Martin looked just past her shoulder, still not her eyes. "Please step away." Humiliation washed over her in a wave, hot and familiar and exhausting. The particular indignity of being dismissed in front of colleagues you have worked beside for years, of being made invisible by someone who knows exactly what they are doing. She quietly removed her gloves, slowly, one finger at a time. "Of course," she said. Her voice didn't shake. It never shook. That was one of the things she had mastered over 10 years. Keeping her voice steady when everything else wasn't. Without another word, she walked out. Behind her, she heard Vanessa say, "Thank you," as though Maya had done something considerate. As though she had stepped aside willingly, graciously, as a favor. Maya kept walking. In the staff lounge, Maya sat alone at the corner table, the one nobody chose because it sat under the air vent and was always slightly too cold. She pressed her palms flat on the surface and looked at them. Nurse Alina rushed in moments later, the door swinging hard behind her. "Maya." She sat down immediately. "I cannot believe what just happened out there. I was standing right there. I heard everything." Maya forced a small smile. "It's fine." Alina leaned forward. "No, it is absolutely not fine. Dr. Reynolds is out there right now arguing with Martin. Half the floor is furious." "Isn't new, Alina. That doesn't make it acceptable." "No," Maya said quietly. "It doesn't." Alina reached across and squeezed her hand. Maya looked down at the table. "My little brother died," she said, "because someone once decided he wasn't worth treating quickly enough." Alina's expression shifted. Maya rarely spoke about Jordan. In 10 years of friendship, Alina could count on one hand the number of times his name had come up. "He was 9, Maya continued. Her voice was steady. "I was 14. He came in sick, clearly sick, and we sat in that waiting room for hours while people who arrived after us were seen first. And when they finally took him back," she stopped briefly. "They moved slowly with him, asked fewer questions, ordered fewer tests, made more assumptions." Alina said nothing. She understood that this was not a moment for words. By the time anyone took it seriously, the window was already closing. Maya finally looked up. He died 3 weeks later. She looked back at her hands. I became a nurse because of Jordan. I promised him that no child would ever suffer because prejudice got in the way of their care. A pause. Not on my watch. Hours passed. Maya moved through her remaining assignments with the focused quiet of someone operating on discipline alone, her mind never fully leaving Bay 3, never fully leaving Noah Whitmore and those dropping oxygen numbers, and the particular shade of pale she had seen on his face. Meanwhile, in the pediatric ICU, Noah's condition was rapidly worsening. Dr. Reynolds stood over the new test results with a tight expression. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, more to himself than the resident beside him. "He should be responding by now. Standard treatment isn't producing the results we'd expect," the resident agreed. "I know that," Reynolds said. "The question is why?" Then Noah began seizing. The alarms detonated throughout the room in a wall of urgent sound. Vanessa cried out. Richard moved instinctively toward his son before a nurse caught his arm and held him back. Doctors converged from both directions. Code blue. Bay 3. Vanessa was guided into the hallway, both hands pressed to her mouth, watching through the window as the team worked over her son. Richard stood just behind her, one hand on her shoulder, his face stripped completely of its usual composed authority. "Someone tell me something," he said to anyone who would answer. "Someone tell me what's happening." Nobody stopped moving long enough to respond. 3 exhausting hours later, Noah stabilized. Barely. The room exhaled. Monitors settled. But the expressions on the doctors' faces as they filed out were not the expressions of people who believed the crisis was over. Additional test results arrived just after midnight. Dr. Reynolds stared at the screen for a long moment. Then his face changed in the way faces change when something clicks into place, and the answer is worse than the question. He picked up the phone. At 7 the following morning, Dr. Samuel Grant arrived. He was older, unhurried, the kind of specialist whose calm came not from indifference but from having seen enough to know that panic never helped anyone. He studied Noah's chart at the nursing station without speaking, reading carefully, going back to reread sections. When he finally set it down, he said, "Who has managed this case?" "Several physicians through the night," Dr. Reynolds explained. "I see that." Dr. Grant's voice was measured. "What I'm asking is who here has experience specifically treating pediatric autoimmune vascular syndrome." The room went quiet. "It's extremely rare," a resident offered. "Most of us have never." "Yes," Dr. Grant said, "which is precisely why I'm asking." He looked around the room. "Surely Maya Johnson is involved in this case." Every face turned slightly in the way faces turn when a name lands in a room and nobody quite knows what to do with it. Dr. Reynolds said carefully, "Maya was reassigned last night." "Doctor." Grant looked at him. "Reassigned. There was a family request." "Doctor." Grant was quiet for a moment. 5 years ago, he said finally, Maya Johnson co-authored the most significant research on PAVS pediatric management published in the last decade. She treated 12 cases successfully when no one else in this country knew how to identify the presentation. She essentially wrote the protocol we would be following right now. He looked directly at Martin Hale, who had appeared in the doorway. "Without her developing a treatment plan for this child in the next few hours, I would estimate his chance of survival at less than 20%. 20%. The number sat in the room like something physical. Vanessa Whitmore had been sitting in the hallway just beyond the open door. She heard every word. She stood up slowly, like the movement cost her something. "What did you say?" she whispered. Nobody answered. She looked at Dr. Reynolds. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "Get her." Martin was already moving toward the elevator. He searched the nurses' station, the break room, the locker room. He found the locker room last. Maya's locker was empty, clean and bare as though she had never been there. On the top shelf sat a sealed white envelope with his name written on the front in Maya's handwriting. Martin's hands were not quite steady when he opened it. The letter was 4 sentences long. "I became a nurse to save children." not to repeatedly prove I deserve to touch them. I have given this hospital 10 years. Last night it gave me its answer. Effective immediately, I resign. Martin sat down on the bench in the empty locker room. He sat there for a long moment, just holding the paper. Back upstairs, Noah crashed again, the alarms, again, the running, again. Vanessa in the hallway with her back against the wall, completely undone now, crying in a way that had long since moved past dignity, past composure, past anything except a mother reduced to the most essential terror there is. Richard stood beside her. He said nothing for a long time. Then quietly he asked Martin, "Where does she live?" Martin hesitated. Richard looked at him. Martin gave him the address. 30 minutes later, a black luxury SUV stopped outside a modest suburban home on a quiet street lined with oak trees. Vanessa and Richard walked to the front door slowly. Neither of them spoke on the way up the path. They stood on the porch for a moment before Vanessa raised her hand and knocked. The door opened. Maya stood there in sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt, her hair loose. She looked at them with an expression that revealed nothing. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Vanessa's eyes drifted past Maya into the hallway behind her. Photographs covered the wall. Dozens of them. Children of every age, smiling in hospital gowns, holding hand-drawn cards, standing with Maya in corridors and doorways and parking lots. Framed newspaper articles, medical certificates, letters in children's handwriting, and in the center of the wall, surrounded by small hospital bracelets arranged like a border, a photograph of a smiling little boy. Young, gap-toothed grin. Eyes full of life. Beneath it, a small memorial plaque, Jordan Johnson. 2004-2013, Vanessa whispered. "Your son!" Maya shook her head. "My brother." Richard's eyes moved to a framed newspaper article beside the photographs. The headline was clear from where he stood. Local nurse LEADS breakthrough treatment saving 12 children with rare immune disease. The disease name matched Noah's diagnosis exactly. Richard read it once. Then read it again. Vanessa turned back to Maya. Her perfect composure was completely gone. Every careful layer of it stripped away entirely. What was left underneath was simply a mother. Terrified, guilty, desperate. "We didn't know," she said. Her voice broke on the last word. Maya looked at her calmly. "No," she said softly. "You didn't want to know." Richard lowered his head. For the first time, the man who had stood in that emergency room with his arms folded and his silence lending weight to his wife's cruelty had absolutely nothing to say. Vanessa's knees gave way. She went down onto the porch, both hands pressed together, tears streaming freely down her face. "Please," she whispered. "Our son is dying. He is 8 years old and he is dying, and you are the only person who can help him." Her voice cracked completely open. "Please save my son." Maya stood in her doorway and looked at the woman kneeling on her porch, the same woman who had blocked her path, who had said those words in front of a room full of people, who had stood by while a child's life was gambled against her prejudice. And for the first time in 10 years of nursing, Maya Johnson stood at a door that had no protocol for what came next. If you were Maya, would you walk back through that hospital door? Would you return to save Noah after what his parents did? Could you? Tell me honestly in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If this moved you even slightly, hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. Subscribe if you haven't already and turn on your notifications, because part 2 is coming very soon, and what happens when Maya makes her decision will leave you completely speechless. The truth about the Whitmore family runs deeper than anyone knows, and Maya's past is about to change everything. Stay tuned. Part 2 is on the way.